Winter arrived early in the winter of 1897, and the Wyoming plains had turned into a frozen wilderness. Snow rolled across the land like white waves, burying the wagon trails and ranch fences beneath silent drifts. The wind howled through the open prairie, sharp enough to cut through coats and skin alike. On that lonely road far from any town, a wagon creaked slowly across the frozen ground. Inside the wagon sat and her younger sister. Both women wrapped their thin shawls tightly around their shoulders, trying to protect themselves from the bitter wind. His face was pale but calm, her hands resting protectively over the gentle curve of her pregnant belly. Only 19 looked far more frightened. Her hands trembled as she held her coat closed around her own unborn child. Across from them sat their husbands, brothers Harold and neither man spoke. The silence inside the wagon felt heavier than the storm clouds gathering above them. Finally broke the quiet. Harold, how much farther to town? Her husband didn't look at her. His eyes remained fixed on the snowy horizon ahead. Not far, he muttered coldly. But something about the answer felt wrong. The road they were traveling was not the road that led to town. Noticed at first, she had grown up on these plains and knew the land well. Slowly, unease spread through her chest. Harold, she said again more firmly, this isn't the road to Silver Creek. For the first time, Harold turned to face her. His expression held no warmth, no kindness, only impatience. Get out of the wagon, he said flatly. Blinked in confusion, what? Harold pulled the wagon to a stop in the middle of the empty prairie. The wind immediately rushed around them, swirling snow across the frozen ground. Shifted uncomfortably beside his brother but said nothing. His stomach tightened. Harold, what are you doing? Harold climbed down from the wagon and walked around to the back. Without a word, he grabbed the sisters' small travel bags and tossed them into the snow. Out, he repeated. His voice trembled, it's freezing, we'll die out here. Finally spoke, though he wouldn't meet's eyes. We can't afford 2 wives and 2 bobbies, he muttered quietly. The ranch is already struggling. Stared at them in disbelief. You're leaving us? Harold shrugged. You'll manage. Began to cry, clutching her sister's arm. Harold, please, said desperately, we're carrying your children. For a moment Harold's face hardened with irritation. Then he climbed back onto the wagon seat. You should thought about that earlier. Hesitated before climbing up beside him. For a brief second he glanced down at his young wife standing in the snow, tears frozen on her cheeks. But cowardice won. He looked away. The wagon wheels creaked forward. Snow crunched beneath the horses' hooves as the wagon slowly rolled away across the white plains. Screamed after them. Oh, please. But the men never looked back. Soon the wagon became nothing more than a dark shape fading into the storm. Then even that disappeared. Silence returned to the prairie. Only the wind remained. Collapsed into the snow, sobbing. Knelt beside her quickly, pulling her up. Oh, listen to me. We're going to die, whispered weakly. Forced herself to stay calm, though fear was clawing inside her chest. No, she said firmly, we keep moving. But where? Looked around. The land stretched endlessly in every direction. No ranch houses. No barns. No smoke from chimneys. Nothing. Still, standing still meant freezing. So helped to her feet, and together they began walking through the snow. Each step was slow and painful. The wind pushed against them, stinging their faces and making breathing difficult. Their shoes quickly soaked through with melting ice. Minutes felt like hours. Strength faded fast. Her breathing grew heavy. Finally her knees buckled and she collapsed into the drift. Cried, kneeling beside her. His eyes were half closed now. She whispered, I'm so tired. His heart pounded with panic. She looked across the endless white horizon and screamed as loud as she could. Help, somebody please help. But the prairie swallowed the sound. Tears filled eyes. She wrapped her arms around her younger sister, trying to shield her from the freezing wind. Stay awake, whispered, please stay awake. Time blurred. The storm thickened. Then faintly, a distant sound broke through the wind. Hoofbeats. Lifted her head suddenly. At first she thought she imagined it, but the sound grew louder. A rider appeared through the falling snow. A tall cowboy on a dark horse, his coat dusted white by the storm. He slowed when he saw the shapes in the snow. For a moment he thought they were bodies, then lifted her weak hand. "Please," she whispered. The cowboy quickly dismounted. His name was Cole. His sharp eyes took in everything at once: the frozen ground, the abandoned bags, the two exhausted women, and the unmistakable curve of pregnancy beneath their coats. Without asking questions, Cole removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around. Then he gently lifted onto his horse. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Barely had the strength to nod as he helped her climb behind the saddle. Cole turned his horse toward the distant hills where his ranch stood hidden among the pines. The storm roared louder behind them, but as they rode away, glanced weakly over her shoulder. Far in the distance, through the curtain of snow, she thought she saw something moving. A wagon, heading back toward them. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Cole, I think they're coming back." The cowboy narrowed his eyes toward the white horizon. And for the first time that night, a shadow of danger followed them through the storm. The storm followed them for miles across the frozen plains. Snow whipped through the air as Cole guided his horse carefully along the narrow trail that led toward his ranch. Behind him, clung weakly to the saddle while leaned against Cole's shoulder, barely conscious from cold and exhaustion. Cole pushed his horse faster. He knew the land well, and he knew something else too. Another hour in that storm and the sisters might not survive. At last, the dark outline of tall pine trees appeared ahead. Hidden within the trees stood a modest ranch house, its windows glowing faintly with the warm light of a lantern. Cole's ranch. As he rode into the yard, his two ranch dogs began barking loudly, racing through the snow to greet him. "Easy boys," Cole muttered as he dismounted. He gently lifted from the saddle and carried her inside the cabin, stumbled in after him, her legs shaking with exhaustion. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around them like a miracle. A fire burned steadily in the stone fireplace, filling the room with heat and the comforting smell of burning pine wood. Cole laid carefully on a small bed near the fire and quickly wrapped thick blankets around her. Then he poured warm water into a cup and handed it to. "Drink slowly," he said calmly. His hands trembled as she held the cup. The warmth spread through her chest, bringing life back into her frozen body. Slowly opened her eyes, staring around the room in confusion. "Where are we?" "You're safe," Cole answered quietly. He placed another log into the fire, making the flames grow brighter. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The storm outside howled against the wooden walls, but inside the cabin there was only warmth and silence. Later that night, after they had eaten a small meal of bread and stew, finally found the strength to speak. "We owe you our lives," she said softly. Cole shook his head. "No one deserves to freeze out there." Hesitated before continuing. "There's something you should know." Cole leaned back in his chair, listening quietly. Explained everything. How the brothers, Harold and had married them mostly for their family land. How the ranch debts had grown worse over the past year. And how the men decided the easiest way to solve their problems was simply to remove their wives before the Bobbies were born. Wiped tears from her eyes as finished. "They left us there like animals," she whispered. Cole's expression darkened slightly, though he remained calm. He had seen cruel men before, but abandoning two pregnant women in the middle of winter was something even the roughest cowboys rarely did. "You won't have to worry about them tonight," Cole said quietly. Outside, the storm raged harder against the cabin walls. And for the first time in days, the sisters slept peacefully. Days turned into weeks as the storm continued to bury the valley beneath deep snow. During that time, something unexpected began to happen inside the small ranch house. Life slowly returned, regained her strength, and began helping with simple chores around the cabin, often cooked meals while Cole repaired tools or chopped wood outside. Despite being a quiet man, Cole showed small acts of kindness every day. He built a second bed in the cabin so the sisters could sleep comfortably. He brought extra blankets from the barn, and he never once made them feel like a burden. for the first time since their marriages, and felt something they had almost forgotten. Respect. One afternoon when the storm finally calmed, Cole saddled his horse and rode into the nearby town of Silver Creek to buy supplies. The town saloon buzzed with the usual noise of cowboys and travelers escaping the winter cold. As Cole stepped inside, he overheard a conversation that made him stop. Two men were talking near the bar. "Did you hear about the wives?" one said. "Ran off with some thief, I heard." Cole frowned slightly. The second man laughed. "Harold says they stole money and disappeared. Sheriff's been looking for them." Cole's jaw tightened. The brothers were already spreading lies. And worse, they were searching for the sisters. Cole returned to his ranch before nightfall, his mind troubled. When he stepped into the cabin, immediately noticed the change in his expression. "What happened?" she asked. Cole hesitated before answering. "Your husbands are telling people you ran away." His face went pale. "They're looking for us," realized. Cole nodded slowly. Silence filled the room. Finally, Cole spoke firmly. "If they come here, they won't take you." For the first time since that terrible day in the snow, smiled through tears. Because someone was finally standing up for them. That night the wind was quiet. Snow rested peacefully across the valley. Inside the cabin the fire burned low as everyone slept. Then suddenly, the ranch dogs began barking furiously outside. Cole woke instantly. He moved to the window and looked into the darkness. Three riders stood near the ranch gate, their horses breathing clouds of steam in the cold night air. Even through the dim moonlight, Cole recognized the man sitting in front. Dull, broad-shouldered, cruel eyes. Harold. Behind him sat and another hired gun. The men who left the sisters to die had found them. Cole slowly reached for his revolver. And outside, the riders began moving toward the cabin. Morning came slowly over the valley. A pale winter sun rose above the pine trees surrounding Cole's ranch, casting long shadows across the deep snow. The night had passed in uneasy silence after the riders appeared near the gate. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled softly while and sat awake, their faces tense with worry. Cole had not slept. He stood near the window, watching the ranch yard carefully. The riders had not left. Their horses were tied near the fence, and the men waited as if they owned the land. Stepped closer to the window and looked out. Her heart sank when she recognized the man standing beside the gate. Harold. His coat flapped in the cold wind as he paced impatiently through the snow. Behind him stood his younger brother, along with another rough-looking man carrying a rifle. His voice trembled. "They came back." Cole nodded slowly. "They're not leaving without trouble." He reached for his revolver and calmly strapped it to his belt. Touched his arm gently. "You don't have to fight them for us." Cole looked at both sisters for a moment. His voice remained steady. "Some men think cruelty makes them strong," he said quietly. "They're about to learn different." With that, he stepped outside. The cold air bit sharply against his face as he walked across the snow toward the gate. Harold grinned when he saw him approaching. "Well now," Harold called mockingly, "looks like we found where our wives been hiding." Cole stopped several feet away. "They're not your wives anymore," he said calmly. Shifted nervously behind his brother. Harold laughed. "You think you can keep them here, Cowboy? Those women belong to us." At that moment the cabin door opened behind Cole and stepped out onto the porch. The wind lifted its hair as she spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We belong to no one." Harold's smile disappeared instantly. "You ungrateful woman," he snapped. "You ran off with this ranch thief and expect people to believe you're innocent." Walked slowly forward, stopping beside Cole. Her voice remained steady. "You left us in the snow to die." Stepped beside her sister. "You left your own children to freeze before they were even born." For a moment the valley was silent except for the wind. A few nearby ranch workers had begun gathering near the road, drawn by the rising argument. Harold glanced around and saw the growing crowd. His anger flared. "They're lying," he shouted. "Those women stole from us and ran away." Cole stepped forward slightly. I found them half frozen in the prairie, he said firmly. No wagon, no shelter, just snow and wind. Murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Zvay's turned pale. Sheriff Amos Dalton soon rode into the yard, having heard the shouting from down the road. What's going on here? The sheriff demanded. Bravely told the entire story. Every terrible detail. The wagon ride. The abandonment. The endless walk through the storm. Slowly placed a hand on her stomach, her pregnancy clearly visible beneath her coat. The sheriff's expression darkened. Harold suddenly realized the crowd was turning against him. Rage exploded across his face. You're ruining everything, he shouted at. In a flash of fury, Harold pulled his revolver. Gasps echoed from the crowd. He raised the weapon toward. But Cole was faster. His gun fired with a thunderous crack across the snowy valley. Harold's revolver flew from his hand, spinning into the snow several feet away. The bullet had struck his wrist just hard enough to knock the weapon free. Harold screamed in pain, clutching his arm. Instantly dropped his own gun and raised both hands. I don't want trouble, he stammered. Sheriff Dalton quickly stepped forward and kicked Harold's revolver away. That's enough, the sheriff growled. You two are coming with me. The brothers were arrested that very morning. Word spread quickly through Silver Creek. The entire town soon learned the truth. The men who abandoned their pregnant wives were finally brought to justice. Months passed. Winter slowly faded and spring sunlight warmed the valley once more. Life at Ranch changed in beautiful ways. Gave birth to a healthy baby boy with dark hair and bright eyes. Gave birth to a little girl whose laughter filled the cabin like music. Through every moment, Cole stood beside them. Helping, protecting, never asking for anything in return. One quiet evening, as golden sunlight settled across the ranch fields, and sat beside Cole on the wooden porch. Their bobbies slept peacefully inside. Looked at Cole with gentle gratitude. You gave us a home when we had none. Smiled softly. You gave our children a future. Cole stared out across the peaceful prairie. This ranch felt empty before you came, he admitted quietly. The sisters exchanged a glance. Then spoke the words both of them had been thinking. Maybe it doesn't have to be empty again. Nodded shyly. We don't want to leave. Cole looked at them in surprise. Continued gently. You saved our lives, you protected our children, and you treated us with kindness when no one else would. Added softly. We want to build a family here with you. Cole sat silently for a long moment, the warm breeze moving across the prairie grass. Then he finally smiled. A rare, genuine smile. Months later, the small church in Silver Creek held a simple wedding. No grand decorations. No fancy suits. Just a quiet promise between three people who had survived the worst storm of their lives. As winter returned once more to the plains, snow fell softly around ranch. But inside the warm cabin, laughter echoed through the rooms. Two mothers rocked their bobbies beside the fire. And the cowboy who once rode the frontier alone finally understood something the storm had given him. Not every storm destroys a life. Sometimes, it brings you the family you were meant to find. Which city are you watching our channel from? Please leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.